Hi there, I'm Amy and welcome back to the channel, or welcome if you're new here. Today I've got another Sims 4 speed build for you, and this one's going to be a family home using the new Lovestruck Expansion Pack. The inspiration I got for the shape of the build was actually from Airbnb, and since it was quite a big build, it does end up being 3 bedrooms in total, which is why I made it for a family instead, so there ends up being space for 2 adults, a teenager, and then a child. And of course I decided to build this in the new world of Ciudad, Enamorada. I really love this world. I haven't built much in it yet. This is the first one that I actually ended up doing when I got the expansion pack, but I love all of the bright colours that come with the assets in the game pack, and the jacaranda trees are really pretty, so I'm really excited to be able to use those now. I first discovered those trees in Australia actually, when I went to visit at the end of last year, and I've never seen such vibrant purple trees in my life, so that was really surprising. I didn't know they were from Mexico as well, so that was interesting to see when this pack got announced. You may have noticed that I've just flipped where the front of the build is, and that was just because the lighting happened to be better at this angle, so I do turn it back around a bit later on. It did also take me a while to decide what colour to make the build, but I ended up going with this green colour. I thought it was really pretty, and then on the inside, although I hadn't planned that at this stage, it ends up being very pink and green, so that worked quite well with the outside theme. I do also cut out a bit of my window placement on here, just because the buildings around this slot are really tall, so whenever my camera panned over to them, the screen just kept jumping up and down, so it was really frustrating to watch, which is why I ended up just cutting it out. But you'll see where the windows end up being placed as I decorate the interior anyway. The floor plan came together quite simply. It did take me a while to figure out the best layout, so I ended up having to do a Jack and Jill style bathroom, which is for the teenager and child. It's not my preference for bathrooms. I personally don't even like the thought of having 2 doors to one bathroom in real life, so I usually try to avoid it in The Sims, but there wasn't really any space to put an upstairs bathroom that was accessible to those 2 rooms without it being in the corner where they would each have a door into it, which is why I ended up doing it. But I have seen it before in houses, so it's not that unusual. I just can't think of anything worse than forgetting to lock my siblings' door to the bathroom and then they walk in on me or something. I just don't really like the concept in general. I'm now just laying out a load of placement furniture so this doesn't stay put. It is also very dark. I do add lights shortly, but because I was just working out where each of the rooms were, I wasn't too worried about making it particularly visible. And something surprising that came out of the latest update for The Sims 4 for me personally was that when I logged into the game, a couple of videos ago, or maybe my last video, I can't remember now, I was complaining about the fact that I earned the event rewards that took place a while back now, where you had to log in several days each week in order to access certain items. And I'd been on The Sims pretty much every day for that period, but I forgot to redeem them while the event was active. So there were a few that I missed out on, even though I did earn them. Well, following the update that came before this expansion pack was out, I actually got them in my game. A pop-up appeared on the main screen as I logged in saying that I've now claimed these items. So I now have them, which is really great. I don't have to keep jumping into the gallery to pick out that little cushion or some of the other items that I was missing. And now I've got all of the cast things, including that new trait, which was the one thing that I was most bothered about, to be honest. So I'm really glad that they're now in my game. So if you all had a similar issue, be sure to check your game because they might be there now. Anyway, we're now decorating the kitchen, and I ended up using these Home Chef Hustle counters because, again, they're my favourites. Towards the end of the build though, and I mean at the end of the speed build, I do change the colour scheme of it though, because at this point I thought I'd do more of a green colour scheme, but then a lot of pink comes in a bit later. And as I looked at the entire build once I'd finished it, I sort of decided that the kitchen could do with having a bit more pink to it. So I switched the swatch of that over. But I think it looks nice either way, although I do end up preferring the pink, so I'm glad I changed it in the end. Hopefully you're not too attached to the green though, and you agree that it looks nicer in the end. But it should be a quick, easy switch back if you decide you preferred the other colour, and you did want to download this build, which will be available on the Sims 4 gallery under my EA ID, which is just AWayfaringFrog. I also love this new splashback item so that you can have a different wallpaper but still be able to customize the splashback that you have. There's not a huge number of swatches, and some of them are super bright, so it would be nice if the Sims team brought more of those in the future, but I really love having this one at least. And just jumping back outside now that the kitchen's pretty much sorted, I played around with round pools for quite a while. I did cut a lot of my experimenting out of the video, but because they're new, I wasn't really sure how best to use them. But I knew I wanted a more interesting shape, which is why I went for this here. If we had the ability, I'd probably make the smaller section be shallower as a result, so that it's more like a kiddie pool or something. I don't believe that's an option, so I just left it as the normal pool state, but I think it's quite an interesting shape, so I really like that. And I just added a couple of those jacaranda trees in the background. If you're wondering how there's two variants, there's only one in the main catalogue of The Sims following this expansion pack, so you have to go into debug to get the other one. So there's just a slightly shorter, more bushy version, and then a taller, skinnier one. And I think they look really nice together. It adds quite a good amount of variation. Also, this was my first build since I started using Better Build By and the tool mod, and I really missed those. Especially actually the window snapping mod that I've got from, I think that was from Ravasheen. Again, I usually link my mods in the description if you're interested in checking those out, but I didn't have any of them in this game and I really noticed it. So I'm looking forward to getting the updated versions of those and then just reinstalling them into my game. For a while with the landscaping, I was really unsure on how to lay everything out because it's quite a big lot. I was wanting to do it on a slightly smaller area, but this was the lot that I ended up preferring out of all of the ones in the new world, just from a residential point of view, which is why I ended up on here. But it is a 30 by 30, so it was quite big, which worked out really well for the pool. But it was a struggle to figure out how to fill the rest of the space. I think I did it nicely in the end though. The front ends up having two little sections that go off to either side of the front of the house, and the one that I've already just started decorating is going to be a little seating area with the new fountain from the pack. And then on the other side I end up putting in a chess table, so there's a little windy path covered by landscaping which your Sims can walk over to over there. I did also cut quite a bit of the landscaping out just because it got very monotonous, so you might see sometimes landscaping appears even though you haven't seen me place it down, just because there was a lot I ended up doing, and since it's a new pack I wasn't very familiar with everything that came in it, so I was playing around for quite a while, just trying to figure out what went well together and things. One weird thing I did notice with debug though, these stepping stones that I'm placing down now, you might recognise them because they're from base game, but these are actually in the Lovestruck Expansion Pack debug. The only thing was, these seem to have a hitbox, unlike the base game ones, so your Sims can't actually walk over them. It was so frustrating while I was playtesting because I thought it was the bushes for a while because they have a really big grid square, but it wasn't those. It ended up being the little stepping stones. So just a warning, if you decide to use those in your builds as well, probably just stick to the base game ones. I do switch the ones in this build out at the end, but I don't show that on camera, so that they're fine now. It's I just find it really odd because they're within the world as well, so I would have thought that the Sims should be able to walk over them. I haven't played in the world yet, so I haven't experienced it myself, but when I was looking around, they sort of wind around towards a lot, which is the park in the area, so I assume that your Sims can walk across them, but not when you get them from debug, unless I'm missing something really obvious. So do let me know if you know why that might be or something, because I really like these ones. They're a different colour, so it adds a bit more variation in, but they're just unusable if the Sims can't even walk over them. Anyway, I just talked over the entire bar area where I had a barbecue as well. I used most of the items from the Desert Lux kit for that, and then the counters, I can't remember, it was one of the stuff packs for outdoors. That's where the counters are from, but I used the end pieces so that they didn't have drawers on them, they just had the stonework, which I preferred. So I just alt placed those together, and I thought that looked really good. You might have noticed that I just switched out that awning that goes over the back door. That's because the version that I originally had was one from debug for the Lovestruck expansion pack, but visually the plants going up the wooden poles looked really bad. I think it's just because it was from debug, whereas that actual item does exist in Get Together, so I just grabbed that from the other expansion pack and put it in place of the one from Debug, and it looks a lot nicer. It was only if you looked at it really closely, but it bothered me enough while I was building, I figured I'd just switch it out. And now upstairs on this balcony area, I'm just adding in this little fire pit section for your Sims. I was also desperate to use all of the plants from this new pack. I love all of them, I think they're great, but there's one which comes in a stone pot. You might have seen it flash up on screen just now. And it's got these really long leaves coming out of it, but it feels more like a centerpiece kind of plant, and I just couldn't figure out where to put it in the build, so that one doesn't end up making it. There was another one of the smaller ones as well, which feels like it just doesn't look very good quality. I did end up putting that in the build, but it's really not my favourite plant. It's always nice to get new ones though. You can see that the landscaping's coming together a bit more now as well. I ended up putting a lot of lighting around the area so it looks really bright at night. And I think I filled in the spaces quite well without making it look like too much. So here I'm just adding in a few more base game plants to fill out the empty sections, and a few extra flowers to add a bit more colour to the area. I also really like this tall white plant that I've added in a lot of places. Again, that's from Debug in the new pack. I do wish it came with a lot more swatches. It just comes in that white colour. There isn't any other swatch, which is kind of a shame, but I think they look really nice, so I made sure to include those everywhere. I also added in this little house number sign, which came in this pack again, and I think that looked really cute, so I'm glad to be able to have a little item like that. I think you can download a few of those sorts of things off the gallery, where people have brought custom content into their game and then got their sim to paint from reference, and then you've got a little sign in the same kind of way. But it's nice to have one actually in the game as well that we can use. I really wanted to add terrain paint at this point as well before I started decorating the interior, and thankfully I didn't end up having a glitch where it decided to delete itself. So that was really good news. And then jumping back inside, I started next with the entryway. I just added a few clothes here as if your Sims had come in and hung them up, including a few umbrellas as well, and I ended up using a couple of the new items. So there's this table with, I'm not really sure what the design is, it looks like leaves to me, and there's a chair with a similar kind of design, so I switch out the bench that I've currently got from Island Living in favour of that chair, and I think that looks really good. They're very interesting items. The colour of the actual leafy things doesn't change, just the top and then the fabric of the chair. Because they're so stylized though, I doubt I'll be using them that often. As a result, I was really happy that I managed to find a space for them in this build. I just don't generally like that kind of bright orange wood tone, so I generally avoid it whenever I'm building. But again, it was in the new pack, and since I was trying to use most of the new items, I really wanted to include it here. There were a lot of the new items that I didn't end up including in the build as well though. There were quite a few benches and sofas. They're mostly just love seats rather than a 3-seater sofa though, but they're very, very stylized. And one of them, it looks more like an outdoor bench, and then there's a stone bench for outdoors as well. But they're not really my favourite items, to be honest, so I didn't include those at all. And then another one of the sofas was shaped like a pair of lips, and that just wasn't something that I wanted to include in this particular build, so I didn't add that. You can see now that I've just decorated the dining room, I used the table from Seasons, and it had the same colour wood swatch as what's included in the aspects of the windows around, so I thought that worked really well. And then the chairs that I picked out end up inspiring the colour scheme overall. They also seem to pair really well with the items from Dream Home Decorator, so you can see I've used the sectional sofa from that pack here. It does end up changing to a pink swatch very shortly, but in general the colour scheme stays in this kind of style, so I bring in a lot of pink and green throughout, as I mentioned earlier. A lot of that decision came from the wallpaper, which again I'll get to very shortly. That's the one with the roses on it, and I think it's incredible. I really like that wallpaper. Very thankful that they added that in. So here, I'm just grabbing that now. I think it looks really nice. It's very loud, so I probably won't use it in all of my builds, but I enjoyed adding it in here. And then as you can see, the leaves bring in that kind of sage green throughout. So I brought in the pink in the sofa instead. Also, you might have noticed me struggling with the curtains a little earlier, and that was because they kept snapping to the windows, which is just something I'm not used to anymore. So that was a little bit frustrating, but I figured it out in the end. And of course, I always struggle to do a build without using the Booknook kit, so I used that in a lot of areas in the living room. Again, because it had such a dark wood swatch, it tied in the window accents really well, which I quite liked, and it gave me some space to use all of the new clutter from the Lovestruck Expansion Pack. Although this little corner of plants, I ended up just using the Blooming Runes kit since I'd already used the plants from the new expansion pack across most of the build, so I wanted to use something a little bit different here. But again, they tie in really well. I feel like the Sims team has definitely been a lot more consistent lately with different packs having the same colour schemes, so they're a lot easier to build together. And I really like having that option, so it's great as from a builder's perspective to be able to use different kinds of items from all sorts of packs. The little plushies that I just added under the TV as well, the penguin is from the Lovestruck expansion pack, but then that little heart one is one of the early purchase rewards. So if you buy the expansion pack within a set window, that's one of the 3 items that you can get as a reward for buying it early. It's not really something that I like that the Sims do. It feels similar to those event rewards that I mentioned earlier, and whilst I understand it from a business perspective, I just think it's such a shame that if you didn't buy the pack when it came out because you couldn't afford it at that time or something, it really is a shame that you can't get those items at all anymore. I'd also be really interested to know if it works. Do people actually buy the packs more because there's these exclusive items that you can only get for a limited time? I don't suppose EA has that data because I don't think there's any way for them to know the reason that you bought it, but I'd be really interested to know if it actually works, because I have a feeling that most people who are buying the pack would have bought it regardless. So again, it does just kind of seem like punishing people who can't necessarily buy the pack as it comes out. Not that I'm complaining about free stuff, I'll always welcome free stuff in The Sims, but it would be nice if it wasn't limited time at least. Anyway, I've talked over most of the bathroom at this point. It's a fairly simple bathroom. I ended up closing off the shower area since we've now got that new shower door that came in the pack. I really like that they added it in. It's something that I often do with my bathrooms where I create my own shower using the one from university or Snowy Escape, but to have an actual sliding door that looks like it belongs in a bathroom just makes it so much better. So I really like that. And that becomes, I basically copy that upstairs for the ensuite a bit later, so I did cut that out of the speed build. There ends up being 3 bathrooms total, so there's this one downstairs, the ensuite to the master bedroom, and then there's a Jack and Jill style bathroom just for the teenager and child, so plenty of space for your Sims to get ready on a morning. I also love this guitar that they added into this pack. I ran through the swatches just a moment ago and settled on this darker one again just because I had this dark wood theme throughout, but it's so pretty. I really like that as an item. We do already have quite a lot of guitars, but honestly this one's very stylized and different to all of the ones we already have, so I'm not mad that they added it in. And then in this entryway space just out to the back door, I just have added a few clutter pieces here and then an ottoman for your Sims to sit down to change their shoes and things. The shelving unit that I added above it, I more had in mind that it would be a place that I'd put collectibles when I play with Sims. That's usually something that I like to look for in a build whenever I'm doing my own gameplay. So that was the inspiration behind that. And then moving on to the final downstairs room, I ended up making this into a gym. Originally I was going to do an office, but I became very aware that I've done a lot of offices in the builds on my channel, so I thought I'd branch out and do something a bit different. And since we got new gym equipment in this pack, it seemed like quite an appropriate item to use. Plus, I was really eager to use these new weight shelves. That's not something that we've got in the game really at all. We do have a few clutter pieces, like this one I've just put on the side table in here, but we don't have much like these shelving units otherwise, and it really helps to decorate a gym space, so I was quite happy to be able to use those. As for the actual gym equipment, again, those are from the new pack. I'm not super interested in them, to be honest. I feel like we already have a lot of gym equipment, and it does feel like we don't necessarily need new variations each time, but it's nice to have different options, and some of them do have very interesting colours. And now popping back upstairs, I'm just decorating that final bathroom, so the one that comes off both of the 2 bedrooms for the kids in the household. I used a bath in here rather than a shower just so that it was something a bit different, and then I figured if you did want to play in this and you ended up having your sim have children or something, then there'd at least be a place to bathe the child. Or even if you decided to have pets, if you got cats and dogs, then again, you'd be able to bathe your dog in the bath. So I think it was quite useful to at least have one in there. And I couldn't really do a shower tub combo just because of the placement of the windows. And then in the hallway, you may have noticed that I cut out quite a bit of the decorating in this room. That was just because the video was already getting really long and I didn't think it was particularly interesting to watch. So I just added in a few clutter pieces on top of the furniture that I'd already placed in here. But otherwise, there wasn't much to this room since due to the shape of it, there wasn't a lot of space to do anything. So it's mostly just decorative with a little desk in there. And then I added these frames from the Growing Together expansion pack so that you have somewhere to store your photos if you did want to play in this build. And then into the master bedroom, I ended up using this bed rather than the heart bed just because I actually prefer the way this one looks. And I like how the orange on the quilt brings in another colour, so it's not all just pink and green in here. And then the Dream Home Decorator shelving items worked really well. It had that dark wood swatch, but also the green accents to it matched perfectly with the rest of the green in the room. So I thought that was a really good use of the space as well. And then I added it in that little suitcase item. That does mean that your Sims can't walk around to that side of the bed, just because it is in the way. But when I was playtesting, it looks like you can put that in your inventory or move it around in live mode, so I don't think it's a huge problem. And then of course your Sims can technically scoot across on a bed, so there is always that as an option. I swear as well that there's meant to be a canopy that can go over the beds to make it look like a 4-poster bed, but for the life of me I couldn't find it in here, but I'm sure I saw it on people's build videos when the pack first came out and some Simmers had early access to it, but I just couldn't find it in the catalogue. I didn't think there was much space in here anyway, so I wasn't too worried. I didn't really plan to use it. But for my next build, I'm hoping to incorporate it somewhere since it seemed like a really cool item, but I just don't know where it went. So I don't know if it's just been mistagged or if I'm just completely blind and missed it. And now into the teenager's bedroom, and this was around where I discovered that the high school years pack works really well with Lovestruck in terms of the assets that come with it. The colours all merge really well together, so I enjoyed that aspect of it. I did also try to make the colour scheme in here a bit different to the rest of the house, just so you could see that it's for a different Sim, not the one who's decorating the house. And I also included a custom desk. Putting one of the actual desks in game meant that the chair would slot to the middle of it, and because of the placement of the bathroom door, which I couldn't easily move, that just didn't really work very well. So I ended up making my own just using a dining table, and then the new side table that came with Lovestruck fit really well underneath it, so I liked adding that in as well. And then using my favourite shelves again, because everything snaps to it, unlike the base game shelves, I'm just cluttering these up with a lot of different items to make the place look lived in. I also added in this base game picture. It's not one I've used very often before. I really like it though, it's just very bright, so I don't find myself drawn to it too much of the time because I don't always have such a brightly coloured house, and then the frame is very ornate. So I was really happy that I managed to find a space for it here. It was actually in an update, maybe in the last 2 years or something, and The Sims collaborated with some artists, and that was one of a few options that came out. So it was really nice to see that they're doing things like that with creators. Hopefully they continue that trend. And then moving on to the kids' bedroom, I tried to make this bright like the rest of the house as well. So I went with this bed from the kids' room pack, I think it was. And then again, the side table that I initially had was from that same pack, but I ended up going for the ones from high school years instead, since it had the same kind of wood tone, and I just preferred the look of these. I also included plenty of things for your child Sims to do here, so there's that big stuffed toy, and then I added in the creative desk where they can craft certain items. While I was just looking at clutter for the room though, I did remember this little cushion from the event rewards, and I'd meant to put that into the living room on the sofa, just because it looked a bit bland without any kind of cushions on here, and I thought it helped tie in more of the green. So I like being able to use that, and I loved that I didn't have to get it from the gallery since it's now in my game. So thank you so much, Sims team, if that had anything to do with you. I don't know if that was just the game updating and realising that I should have been given those rewards, but I'm just glad that they're there now. In a little while as well, I end up adding the wallpaper into here, which is just purple, using some of the base game wallpaper and the new one. The only thing is, I didn't realise it deleted a load of clutter when I placed it. Another one of the glitches, of the many glitches in The Sims 4. I do end up adding in those clutter items afterwards, I noticed while I was playtesting, so they do come back, even though you might notice that they disappear and don't get replaced very shortly. And with that, we're now coming to the end of the speed build portion of this video, so if you did enjoy it, please be sure to hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and enable notifications so you'll be notified of when I next upload a video. You can also download this build using my EA ID on the Sims 4 gallery, which is just AWayfaringFrog. And if you'd like to see any other builds on the channel, please do let me know in the comments down below. I know some of you have already commented asking for builds for Animal Crossing characters, so don't worry, they are still on my list. And if you have any thoughts on the new expansion pack, definitely let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoy the screenshots and have a great rest of your day.